kick us off.
Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Differ with Tim and Brian, where we speak with founders, operators, investors who have a different approach to business as usual, and we find out what makes the difference between good and great. Today, we're joined by Taylor James. Taylor is VP of Human Resources at Alma, where he's charting the future of HR and organizational effectiveness. He's an expert in business and workplace innovation and transformational leader in the DEI space. His expertise is gained from working with nonprofit to for-profit companies in multiple areas of the United States. Taylor, welcome, but I don't want to steal your thunder. So please tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. So I've been in HR for about a decade, and I've worked for 3 companies, two of which I've actually built the HR departments. They've all been small companies, sort of in the $10 million to $20 million range, and they've been looking to kind of formalize policies and procedures. And so I've been brought in as the first HR person to help with that centralization and standardization. I'd say I'm a senior HR generalist. I'm happy to get into the tactics in all aspects of the HR function. And I do like to sit at the leadership table to make sure I am advocating for people and the business at that level. I am particularly interested in the employee experience, so kind of taking employee engagement one step further in seeing how I can affect and really enhance the employee experience for all the people that I work with.
No, it's a great. That's a great background. Thanks for sharing that. Just kind of employee experience, and just with your the breadth of experience that you bring to HR, and just what I take from that is roll up the sleeves to get dirty, but also look nice to sit at the table with all the other execs, and clean off all the mud and get on and actually work with the leadership team and elevate HR to what it should be, I think, in a company, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I also take from your experience, it's not your first time building an HR org, so and not being the first time to put that together. So with that said, before we jump into some questions, with Brian and I, because we love to hate each other, one of the things that we like to do is argue and disagree on topics. One of which is AI, and this is a little curveball for you, Taylor, but one of which is AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to take everyone's jobs. He thinks it's not going to take everyone's jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of go back and forth, and we're going to be talking about work and all that stuff, just kind of, and maybe it's not ever either extreme or whatever, but just kind of curious what you how you kind of look at it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by AI and the developments, especially the large language models, obviously like ChatGPT that's come out. I guess I would probably align myself more with Brian. I think humans are going to be stewards of AI for a while until we do get to is it called AGI, like the general intelligence?
Yeah.
Even so I know that ChatGPT can write scripts and that could affect engineers, for example. But when you look at nuanced systems like student information systems, there still is this very significant amount of human stewardship that needs to happen that AI just really can't do it. Can't get into that type of nuance. I think it's probably great for marketing and maybe some automated customer service so far. But the inability to do math, for example, in the language models is certainly limiting. So I think it's really exciting. I think it's time to adopt the technology, and it's time to figure out how we can. I keep saying steward, but how we can sort of shepherd the technology to make it work for us.
Yeah, how we can make it more mature and, like you said, shepherd it.
Yep.
Yeah, I silently just want to not work and sit on my couch and watch House Hunters International all day, eating Taco Bell. So that I feel justified in AI taking my job, but probably won't happen. But that gets us to our kind of first round of questions. So what AI can't do is be a mentor, right? And It can't do it. It can't be a mentee or a mentor. So that's something that we talked about before is mentorship and the importance of like both ways. In your role in as a HR professional, just kind of like what you've seen, grooming people to be part of that, to like it, but also like who do you seek out? So how do you kind of walk us through that a little bit? Like what's been that mentor mentee kind of like role that you've played or had or seen successful for yourself personally, and then maybe relate that to the like the workplace in a way.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So continuous learning, adult learning, and mentorship there, I think, are essential for personal and professional growth. And I think there's like a two-way mentorship where I can learn from others, and then hopefully I can help others develop in their careers in HR. So, to connect with people in the HR community, I attend conferences and industry events. I'm trying to be more active on LinkedIn. I'm a member of a couple of HR-focused professional organizations. And I do try to participate in some like online forums and discussion groups. And through that I can network with other people in HR, learn from their experiences, learn from their perspectives. I also I actively seek mentorship from people who are kind of above me. And that this could be both like inside and outside the org. I think looking to business ownership and the board can be very helpful, but also, people in the community. When I lived in Portland, I think I had 3 mentors in the HR community around Portland in different industries. And then, I really make it a point to mentor others. Currently, on LinkedIn, I'm posting and I sort of see my audience as people who are in HR and learning. It's just sort of helping give people tools just with like some online posts, but then also if people are reaching out, trying to make time for one-on-one coaching or more like formal mentorship programs. And then at work, really connecting with younger people in HR. So it could be an office manager looking to transition into HR or a new recruiter that I've hired or a new generalist. Really trying to keep myself in the tactics so that I can help train them in that day to day, and help them develop in their HR function.
In areas where you've been someone else's mentor, are there obvious places where you tend to see the steepest learning curve when people are trying to make a jump from one level to another? Where do they struggle?
That's a good question. There are a few places where people struggle. I think some of the tech people struggle with right away, maybe not realizing how much or what types of workflows go into, let's say, like an applicant tracking system to onboarding to professional development to separation and everything that's kind of happening behind the curtain. I think there are also a number of employment laws, and that can vary state by state, but also federal laws that people who are either new or inexperienced in HR just are not yet aware of or groomed in. And I think as people become interested in HR and start learning, they kind of realize, they kind of see the world expand. And generally, I think there are opportunities to learn. And I've seen a lot of good interest there.
No, that's interesting. It's actually as you kind of like talking about it, as you think of the staying in the tactics, but also like elevating and like getting HR and learning from the business, right? Like transitioning what your HR knowledge is and those in the weeds tactics to translating to the actual like higher levels of the business, or all those tactics and translating into like a spreadsheet of a CFO or something, right? Or like the view of like what a CEO is like looking at things and how they're looking at it. So with that said, I think it's fair to say with you and like the variety of tactics that you like continue to engage in, plus doing the kind of like the higher level work with HR, that's kind of when we have clients come to us and say, hey, we're looking for an HR role, we need someone that can do like all of that. And like that's kind of like what we think of. Also, like you're not afraid to go recruiting as well, right? But you understand systems and get into tactics, state policies. With that said, it's a lot of challenges doing that in a remote organization, being that sole HR contributor. So kind of, you're talking about some of the challenges. So maybe a couple other challenges, but like, how have you kind of balanced that? And like, what have you done to kind of maybe overcome some of them?
Yeah, the remote workplace has presented novel challenges, to be sure. I mean, primarily the biggest challenge is communication and collaboration. I think it's just harder to communicate and collaborate when people are not in the same room. And I think we've become better at it over the last 3 years. And we have communication tools, obviously, like video conferencing, like we are, using Slack, using different project management software, really making use of tools like Google Suite, where you can be editing a sheet or a doc in real time with one another. Those are good ways to stay connected, I think, and to be able to communicate more in real time. I do feel like there's still can be like an amount of like creativity lost when you don't feel that energy in the same room.
Right.
I think another challenge has been like building trust in relationships. And so I've really tried to make sure that I'm meeting regularly with colleagues, definitely like in the people who are in leadership and management for sure, but then also trying to meet regularly with every employee if I can. Currently that's like 60 people.
Right.
But really trying to be transparent and consistent in my communication so that I can start to build credibility and trust as an HR person. I think, not to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but when you ask someone like, what does HR do? There's lots of different answers. And I know that like the way that employees perceive me is different, individual by individual. To some people I'm like Toby from The Office. To some people I'm a cheerleader. To some people I'm a coworker or an advisor. To some people I'm a therapist. And so just like showing up in those different ways, but trying to be open, honest, sincere. Another challenge has been like managing employee engagement. And that is also a big topic, and probably like the answer to that is larger than I can go into right now. I mean, employee engagement is a strategy and is like a business decision. And that's work that I am certainly interested in. But I guess suffice to say for now, like making sure the mission is updated and is sincere for the company, making sure there's all staff meetings, making sure we're being as transparent as possible with numbers, doing more team building activities, having the weekly and daily check-ins, and overall making sure the leadership team is aligned. When there's alignment at the top, that really helps create alignment within the ranks to help drive engagement.
Well, the engagement strategy is a business decision. I mean, that's like, I mean, you see that with the most successful companies because they are making an investment in that engagement, right? They're making a decision, not just in investing in tools, but also investing in extra processes that maybe weren't there before, that they're not afraid of like getting their employees and kind of like creating that, kind of like creating that for their employees, right? To kind of like have to like work within. So no, it's it's just, I don't know, that's just kind of, I'm glad I'm sitting down because that's like a really good, just like thinking of it. And like any good company that you see, and even any company that right now is like focusing on like I think of, for example, I think of like Google and Apple, right? Google's laid off a lot of people. Apple, I don't think has yet, right? At least of today. And just breaking it down simply is, yes, both of them invested a lot in their people. But I think that Google hired a lot of people and is known for having a lot of people, right?
Right. Right.
Whereas Apple is known for not having a lot of people and kind of like pushing them in a way. And it's kind of like engaging their employees to like already know how to do more with less, already know like we run a lean ship. So we all have to be engaged and do this together and be much more collaborative. And I don't know, I just, just thinking out loud, I just wonder if, that's just like, those are two different business strategies, right? And like how they built their organization. And yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of like comparison right now.
Yeah. So one like fine point there, I think, is the Apple CEO took a pay cut, if I'm not mistaken, and
Yeah.
instead of laying people off sort of as an alternative. And that's certainly like a driver of employee engagement, that being credible leadership and like the extent to which the staff sort of like respects leadership in terms of their like communication, trust, coaching, recognition.
Right.
And so like a decision like that to be like, I'm going to take a, I don't know, it's 40% pay cut and we're going to attempt to not lay off people. Like, yeah, that's a business decision.
Right. No,
On
it's,
this topic of
go ahead, Brian.
On this topic of employee engagement, I think that means certain things to people within HR, but employee engagement, when you talk about it, people outside of HR, can be squishy. I'm wondering, from a metric standpoint, how do you track progress? How do you measure against employee engagement?
Yeah, a couple different ways that I would measure it. The easiest and probably like most like broad way is with a simple engagement survey, which is kind of like an internal, and like trimming it down to make it like an internal NPS to see like which employees are promoting the business. So just a couple like simple questions, and then to set up a campaign and do that regularly. So it could be monthly, could be probably quarterly, to see how that like internal NPS score might change and how the needle is moving and how engagement might be changing depending on different initiatives that we've launched at the company.
It's not a static thing, right?
Right. Yeah, not a static. Yeah, not a static thing. I do think also that like the informal sort of like coffee talks do also give me a better sense of the temperature of the company. And it really only is possible at small companies like where I currently am at Alma. But being able to meet with employees individually and regularly, I do feel like I have a good sense of engagement at large, but also individually.
That makes a difference. Yeah, people can like say, "Oh, I'm happy here," but like behind the scenes, yeah, individually, like, "Oh, okay, are they meeting their income goals? Or are they like satisfied and feeling challenged? Or have they achieved any or accomplished any of their like self-development goals?" Right, and doing it kind of like really staying at that pulse, especially individually. I think that's important.
Right.
So that it still feels genuine, right? So it's not like, oh, you got more company speak coming at us, right? It's more, it's individual. It's definitely more genuine. So we've talked about like the way you've overcome the challenges, like in like remote contributor and remote workplace.
Oh, can I interrupt? I had one more piece there to talk about actually.
Yeah,
in the remote workplace. I think another challenge or another maybe an opportunity remotely has been ensuring compliance and documentation. And this might be more like subjective for me, but moving from an office to being completely remote, not having an employee like file cabinet anymore, that was an interesting pivot for me. So launching new software, figuring out new ways to securely store employee data. That was, efficient and accessible. That was a new challenge that I've been working on.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue, actually, kind of like following into my next question in terms of one so it's kind of like a couple things. One, as I want to ask you, laying out the benefit of like a sole contributor in HR to someone that's working on a team, kind of like let's lay that aside. But maybe first I would like to talk to, since you just talked about kind of like tools that you're using and like things that you're trying to implement right now. And, you know, for me, like some of my favorite HR tools are things that help with knowledge management and creating like a lot of business value from it, or tools that are focusing on really more like diversity and like kind of like the demographic metrics within a company, so that the company is making decisions knowing who's working for them, knowing that people are different like backgrounds, right? And knowing then therefore that they're not creating pay gaps between genders, and you know, ethnic groups are equally represented in management as the company is growing, so they're not losing touch of that. So that's how I look at it. But you know, especially since you have a project now, like, tell us a little bit about some tools that you found helpful in actually kind of like deploying some of these strategies.
Yeah. So again, being strategic about it. So really, and that I think begins with like doing audits, doing needs analysis. So when it comes to like DEI or pay equity, let's say, like really trying to examine the current state and the current needs of the company, and being very deliberate with that analysis. And then from there, developing, you know, the comprehensive outline to get to a potential goal with whatever it might be. So can I take this down the DEI line?
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Yeah, I mean, one, it's you're showing us like good process on how you would evaluate it, and like, I mean, yeah, I'd love to know, because I mean, we talked about DEI in our last one and like how to implement it, and I think there's tools and there's ways to kind of like look at that. So I'd love to like let's jump into it.
Jump in there, yeah. And I guess I should have said with DEI, what I've been working on is really underscoring and uplifting equity. I think, or I guess I prefer to begin with equity as sort of the most important piece of DEI. In that, like, I and the team that I'm working with, leadership team, CEO, whoever it might be, we need to understand that the barriers to entry in the company were not equal for all employees, right? People went through different experiences to get to the company, and people are having different experiences at the company. So we just need to understand first and foremost that like it's not equal for people. From there, like then we can start developing the DEI strategy. So like I said, creating this like audit, looking at the demographic makeup of the workforce, collecting feedback from employees, collecting like experiences from employees, and then launching training. And then we're going to want to focus like a lot on unconscious bias, microaggressions, and basic diversity and inclusion best practices. Specific tools that I've launched like out of this have been like regular DEI training during orientation and onboarding, and then also creating different inclusivity groups on Slack where people can find places of like safety and refuge. And I would add, like, while I do have access to Slack if I needed to, I've set up the groups as private and I'm not a member of them. So, you know, one group might be out at Alma, and people can feel safe joining that without even HR knowing that they're a member of that.
Yeah, no big brother's tracking them. It's just right. You know, we're here with our varied experiences and, you know, things that make us individual. And when you're able to create a safe space for employees to like connect with each other on that helps remote work, right? That helps, but also helps just the company, I think, grow and really keep diversity and you mean like equity at that heart of it, right? Because then, you know, if it is that level playing field for folks, then I think people can, you know, perform.
Yes, can perform. And then I think there's strength there that, you know, you have a solid workforce. You have happy people who feel supported, who feel like they can express themselves in an authentic way at work.
It makes them feel ownership too. And I mean, and that's what we hear all the time from founders and any business leaders. Oh, I wish my people had more ownership. I felt like I wish they thought like owners, and we don't give equity out. That's like the other part of it, right? So how do you want them to feel like owners? Like they have to feel connected, right? They have to feel empowered. They have to feel connected to their colleagues, feel ownership in like what they're doing is having impact on business and the direction of the company. Yeah, it's hard to strike. So, and it's not a one-time occurrence either.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's ongoing for sure.
Since we're talking about DEI, something that you shared with me, and just really kind of, I thought, candidly, I thought it was like a pretty brave stance. You focused on anti-racist training in the organization, like that's not easy for everyone to talk about, and you're talking like initially like equity, at least making people realize like, hey, we don't all come from like the same beginnings. We all had different variety of challenges. Some of us had big challenges just to get here. Some of us had no challenges just to get here, right? And then uncovering that on top of anti-racist training and getting and poking into people's sensitivities it's in a way, I just want to hear a little bit more about that. Perhaps like some employees are like, well, that's, it's not my employer's place or role. Others are like, I'm glad my employer is doing this. So walk us through that a little bit in terms of kind of like what that looked like in terms of the training in the organization.
Sure, yeah. So this was at a company that was, predominantly white. And this was in 2020, summer of 2020. And in conducting the like initial needs assessment and sort of like strategic work, I really decided that I wanted to look at systemic racism within the organization. So wherever that might exist, in recruiting, in interviewing, in performance management, in how we're paying, wherever it might be, I want to uncover that. And so I really wanted to select a reputable training provider. And there were, I researched a few, but I wanted to bring in a third party to help provide the training. So I guess I can say shout out to True North EDI out of New York City and Cardozo Jones. They're a firm and they came in and did excellent work. So what we did is we set up mandatory monthly all staff anti-racist training, which included education on topics like systemic racism, unconscious bias, anti-racism best practices, and how to like, with I guess the importance of promoting anti-racism to all staff. And these sessions were very much like discovery sessions, I'd say. And we did actually have people leave the company instead of attending these mandatory meetings. And I think we sort of knew that from the beginning. And I was fortunate to have worked with the CEO, and we were committed to seeing this through, knowing that there would be some employee turnover with it. Ultimately, for the people who stayed, I think everyone has gained a deeper understanding of the impact of racism on individuals and communities, and they've acquired some of the tools and knowledge needed to promote anti-racism in the workplace and in their own communities. More specifically, we had the anti-racist community form and blossom, and they exist now as an entity to help audit processes at the company, including things like recruiting and interviewing. So it's been really great.
Talk about something that the other side of that. One, thank you for sharing. Like again, that's not an easy thing to do. I'd love to know, like, one, was it a lot of convincing of the CEO? Like, what was that like? Was it just going in their office and saying, hey, this is what we have to do, and yeah, we're going to lose people? I don't know, maybe we'll get sued or something. I don't know. Like, that's not that's a tough, that's like a business decision to like do this, right?
Yeah. Candidly, no, the CEO was pretty much already on board. Yeah. Yep. So it was more of a partnership. I think he understood the business case. We really didn't do lots of like data and research about like how anti-racism might affect
Right.
businesses. We sort of made some assumptions, but we really wanted to see it through. I think it was personally important to both of us.
No, that's great. Well, and it's, I mean, it goes to show like change has to come from the top, has to come from leadership
Yeah.
to really drive that down. And then on the other side is, you know, it's just like, you know, case studies to show the business impact from that. Maybe lower recruiting costs, higher like employee like retaining your number of employees, like longer tenure with the company, less like workplace accidents, like better happiness, right? I mean, that leads into so many other things that just impact the individuals that work for the company, right? By making a small change like this, by doing this training and kind of, yeah, drawing that line in the sand, right? And saying this is what we stand for, and people will be attracted to that will want to work there. And yeah, I just like seeing like that, what's that quantified like business case after the fact of like the, you know, the business impact. You know, so
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess to add on to that, I was personally impressed by the blind spots that I had. So one example would be like binary language in the handbook. It was not something I had really thought about before, frankly. But you know, for in like PTO requests, it says an employee must ask or request his or her manager 2 weeks in advance. You know, just making a change like that to a non-binary. It's great. So I mean, it's great.
Well,
to have,
I mean,
it's great
that's
to have the community.
I stands for inclusion, right? Stands for a lot of things, but yeah, it stands for like, and that's so important, right? And then, and not every, we can tell you right now, like not every employer sees that or does that or is like considerate of that, right? And, you know, we see even companies of 60 to 100 people where they still think like the HR function could be handled by someone that's doing all these other operating pieces, right? And they're great at operating, they understand business, they understand finance and budgeting, all that's great, but it really does take that focused attention and knowing how people are going to interact and react to like what you're doing and gravitate to strategies or not gravitate to them, right? And it's just nothing that can be done. Really, when you have like so many other like kind of like, I mean, this is like so, yeah, that's the reason why it's like such a specialized, important piece of a business. And candidly, I would say a lot of people I met in HR go on to be really good entrepreneurs or COOs or executive leaders because, you know, they know organizational management, they understand how to like kind of like work with a population of people and really get to things that are, you know, at the end of the day, like improving that business productivity through that, you know, individual contribution.
Yep.
That's how I look at it. So we're getting there in terms of questions. A few more that I want to cover. One, we'll talk a little bit about pay equity here in a second. And I want to talk a little bit about employee development a little bit more. And then, but I do want to get into, this is getting back to kind of like fostering remote work and that connectivity. And, you know, when we have companies, we see this in, you know, in every company I've ever worked in, doesn't matter what the, you know, company speak is, silos develop, right?
Yep.
So I guess share with me a little bit, like how have you kind of like gone through that? What are some of those ways you've executed on trying to break that down?
Breaking down silos, yeah. So I think breaking down silos begins at the top again, as we've been discussing. But I think having alignment with leadership and having clear direction from leadership automatically helps break down silos because it encourages cross-functional collaboration and people, you know, employees from different departments getting together on different projects and initiatives to get things done. And it also creates an inclusive work environment as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to have that clear, understandable, smart direction from leadership.
Right.
I'd say, and then sort of like piggybacking on that, is the more transparent, the better. If leadership can share, or if they can host town halls and talk about the organization's goals, challenges, performance plans, and share numbers, I think that really builds trust with employees, and helps people feel less like cogs, and understand more how their work might be impacting the company and how their work might be impacting another department, which helps break down that silo. I think recognizing and rewarding that type of cross-functional collaboration also helps. We've done this by implementing different types of all staff meetings to help highlight like cross-functional cooperation, and giving people kudos for their individual contributions. So one of them is called Celebrating Our Wins, or COWS, for a good acronym there. And it's people anonymously submit gratitude or share sort of like how they've been impressed with someone else. I gathered all that into a deck and then share the deck with everyone at the all staff meeting. And then in real time, the manager will see their employee's name on the slide, and they'll read that slide out loud to everyone else. And that so it kind of like rotates across departments with different managers reading different employees' names. Again, it's all anonymous, but this is type of like really positive, lighthearted sharing. And then through that, always organically and naturally emerges these like patterns and projects that we've been working on. And so this is this way to like reward this cross-functional collaboration.
Also a good way to get managers to communicate, to be better at communicating, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And put them on the spot a little bit.
Right. You get them talking about their people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It feels good. And then I think another way is to provide sort of cross-training and development opportunities. So, if we have a data engineer who's more interested in becoming like a full stack engineer, sort of creating those opportunities for them to move departments, break down in silos, encouraging them to seek mentorship from some of the more senior engineers, that type of thing.
Well, in the good old days, people would just find another role outside of the company that did that. What do you mean? Like go to your manager, go to your like leaders and say, hey, I want to move to this area of the company, and like the company being receptive to that and enabling that kind of movement, right? And it starts with listening to individual employees as much as you can, and staying in front of that. So no, that's interesting. So I know this is like we've spoken before, but I'm learning a lot more from you the second time. So this has definitely been great. So talked about equity. One of the things that we are seeing right now, and this is kind of more, I guess the way I want you to like think about this is, think of it as like, what's that warning? Meaning we have pay equity in a few states in the country, or like a handful of states. There are other states where it's not there yet. Eventually it will be, right? And I think of it as like kind of a very disruptive kind of workplace moment, essentially, right? Where all of a sudden we're going to know like what these ranges were that people are being paid all the time. Maybe we're going to know all of what our colleagues are making, and we're going to have like way more information, and maybe employees aren't even ready for that yet, right? I know not all employers are, but like employees to know that Brian makes like $500,000 more than I do, or something like, right? Mm-hmm. Like, damn it, Brian, darn it, Brian. But the point is, it's like, I see it as a little bit of a disruptive moment. So if you do, or if you see it as like some like big kind of, it is like a workplace change, what do you see or what do you say to like the CEOs or like the executives that are just kind of like putting their head in the sand about it, or not really like, hey, we don't have a state law that we have to be compliant with yet, but well, we can't do that yet. We can't uncover this. We can't uncover this all yet until we have to. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I would say people talk about their compensation anyway. So
Right.
while an employee
Pretty
might
simple.
not, yeah, while an employee might not know every other employee's compensation, any given employee knows a few of their colleagues' compensation.
Right.
And I think trying to hide it and keep their head in the sand is only doing the business a disservice. But I think to address it, you need to be strategic and deliberate. So, a few steps there. I think you need to assess the pay equity. Conducting this like thorough analysis of the current compensation structure, looking for fairness, looking for equity there. And so as you collect data on all the employees, comparing pay levels to job role, and then looking at pay disparities based on gender, race, ethnicity, other factors like that. If I'm doing this type of like assessment, and making sure I'm communicating this to the CEO or to the leadership or to the board, and talking about how we can develop a more transparent compensation policy, how we can share this with all employees, how we can include information on how compensation is determined, how pay increases are granted, how the company evaluates and addresses disparities. And I think there's like a real mechanism there where like adjustments likely need to be made to the comp structure like right away. Like based on this analysis, like beyond just like an annual raise or an annual performance, they're just
There's
like
a structural change that has to play. Has to take place.
Yeah. And then in the interest of like constant improvement, then like really providing like ongoing training, both to like the executive team about like the importance of pay equity, but then also to staff about like how they might be able to move up into the next tier of compensation and what the responsibilities and accountability might look like at that level. And this probably goes back into like check-ins and performance management, but really bringing people in to a better understanding of where they're at in the company and where they can go.
Well, the transparency and that expectation is never going to go away as we have like an emerging workforce of people way younger than myself coming in and graduating college and starting like they're just coming into the workforce with a way different expectation. So that's only going to grow more of a big wave that businesses have to deal with. But it's also like a competitive thing, I think, in terms of businesses that can be that can use it not as like a marketing angle, but as a way of like being competitive. There's definitely ways to like gather your business metrics around, if we're making these kind of organization changes, like what's the business impact, right? I think that as again you have like a changing workforce, you're going to have smart companies are going to be ones that are going to be understanding that this is a way to like this is something that they can leverage and that they can use this to like be a bit more competitive.
Sure.
One thing I would say, I know we're close to time, and I would love to hear what you have to say about this. And I made this claim to a guy that's been in employer branding for 30 years here in New York City, working with the largest companies. And I said, I think in the future, you're going to start seeing every company put on their website their demographic ratios, like who's working for them, if there a pay gap, what is that, what are the management levels. I think that transparency, maybe not every company, but I think you will see that as something that happens more frequently. And he's like, no way, ever, never going to happen. Businesses are going to totally resist that. And candidly, I've only seen one website, and I can tell you the company name that has that on their website. Be curious, I don't know, just kind of off the top of your head, what do you think about that? On your website, careers page, hey, this is what, like, hey, we have a pay gap, or hey, we only have 20% of our workforce of women in management, and our target's 40% or whatever, right? What do you think?
I think I have seen that. I have seen a website with those. I think it's a great idea, and I would probably agree with you that this is where things are headed. I think there's been an interest from employees to work at a company that's like making an impact.
Right.
And now there's an interest, that was kind of like there was, and now there's an interest in people. People are looking for a company that cares about them. And I think that this is like a hallmark of that. People want to know that they're being compensated fairly based on their position and based on where they're at the company, and they're not being compensated differently because of their age or their ethnicity or their sex. I guess like I don't see the downside to publishing all that. It seems to make sense to me.
I'll take it. I mean, that's pretty cool. It's yeah, it's if I think of any role I've had where I didn't think that, where I felt like, okay, my compensation wasn't right, or I felt like I was being wronged in some sort of way, or I wasn't like being like thought of and respected to as like an employee, I never gave 100% of my brain power to that role. Candidly, you're the first person hearing it. I'll admit it. You know, I won't put that on my resume, but I didn't give 100% of my brain power to something. And when I do, I tend to do really well with it. So I guess that's the other thing is like, if you remove some of these things, right? If you have that transparency, you're there and removing obstacles for people. And then they can spend a little bit more time focusing on the task at hand and like putting more of that full energy towards what they're trying to do. So.
Yep. And I think I take that further. I think there's like not to reduce it, but there's like a carrot there for people,
right.
When they understand like if they come in as a junior DevOps engineer at X and they understand the range like flexes up to Y, but they want to become a senior DevOps engineer, like they understand like the 6 major things they need to do to get there, and then they understand what that pay range will be. And it, yeah, I think it maybe makes people more engaged in the work. They give 100% because they're looking to get there.
Because then they know that there's a carrot. Oh, there's that, and that carrot's real. It's not some sort of made up thing.
Right.
It's actually there, and there's other people that have gotten that carrot because they've done those 6 steps.
Because they've already gotten there. Yeah, exactly.
No, I think that's. I mean, this has been great, Taylor. Really, I mean, this has been fun to talk to you. I think this is. I mean, that's kind of like a good kind of like, I think, point to stop on. Like, you know, dangle that carrot, make sure that it's real, and when someone catches it, give them the darn carrot, right? Yeah, don't move it further away, and don't like chop it up and give them half of it. Give them that carrot, right? And yeah. Anyway, what other things that you want to end on? Anything else that like would be good parting words at all, or Brian at all as well? Well, Brian, stop. Taylor, any parting words?
Yeah, I didn't have anything prepared. Thanks for having me. It's been really great to talk about this. I really enjoy, you know, sort of expressing both the philosophy and the tactics of what I've done, and sort of hearing your response as like a totally objective, like third party. So yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah. Well, glad to have you. And again, learn more from you this time. And, you know, look forward to, you know, staying in touch and continue to learn from you and seeing everything that you're doing. So, Brian, anything else? Enjoy your trip. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well.
So we'll edit this out, but we'll do a quick outro here. And Taylor, I missed something on the mentorship. Do you do mentoring for people that like HR professionals want to reach out to you, or is you're just talking about informal things that you've done?
Yes, I am open to be a mentor for sure. Yeah, people reach out. Absolutely.
So Taylor, thanks so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed it. If people want to get in touch with you to find out about Alma or about mentoring, what should they do?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my personal email address is taylorjanes@gmail.com.
Great. So everyone, thanks for joining us today on Differ. If you enjoy these types of conversations with people making a difference, follow me on LinkedIn or follow Tim Frazier on LinkedIn, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Awesome. All right.